turn it on. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the September pre-planning meeting for the Planning Commission. And let's see, so our agenda today, well, let's first do a roll call of commissioners. And let's see who is on the line. Commissioner Burns. No, Commissioner Burns is not here. All right. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis present.
Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson present.
Commissioner Sparati. And Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell present.
Okay.
He may come back on.
Okay, good. So, all right. So our agenda, we have 4 items. And the first one, item A, is 1030 Storrington Drive. It's a fence modification, PC 20-695.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Charles here with Current Planning. This is my first pre-Planning Commission meeting with the Commission, so please feel free to ask any questions, or if I'm leaving anything out, feel free to ask. But following up on our previous meeting, we had a couple comments I wanted to address. The staff report was sent out, and Commissioner Strawson had made a comment just for the nature of the fence and the pipe stem lot. One possibility for compliance regarding the configuration would have been to kind of take each side of the fence and create a swivel, and that would, create a compliance technically with Section 821, but that was discussed with the applicant and, talked about landscaping or maybe bushes, trees, anything with thorns to kind of hinder intruders or anything like that. But we wanted to proceed with this. So that was one comment from the previous meeting I wanted to just address first and foremost. Not a lot has come from public comment in the meantime. We have received from the applicants an updated, visual diagrams, pictures. I think they've done the best job possible to visually display, with the lay of the land and, with the just basic computer programming to just kind of show for reference purposes. So if anyone has any questions on those, that's the document that has been received from the applicants. The sign has been posted. That is compliant with our sign requirements for the property. I saw an email just to confirm that was posted. It is on Storrington Drive, visible to the public. Commissioner Burns also had a concern, a comment on a previous comment from a site plan. The site plan was a plat that was included with the original building permit. There was a note regarding a fence that we had to look into, and that was brought up. In our research, we looked at the task force stance PND and unconditionally approved plats at the time, final site plans. We didn't, pardon me, we did not find any fence details for this particular section of task force stance. This would be specifically section 9. The best explanation we could come up with for what was previously shown was potentially a temporary construction fence, something to, kind of keep trespassers off of the job site or something of that nature, or maybe for reference purposes. But that was a big comment that came up at the previous meeting I wanted to address. I believe that's it, and just wanted to take note that the 2 adjacent property owners had provided letters of support for this application, this fence mod. Those were hopefully included in our previous meeting, but they're now attached, just confirmation for that. But once again, this is my first meeting. I'm just kind of throwing all of my notes out off the top of my head, but if you have any questions, please feel free.
Okay, and we appreciate you going through all those changes from the workshop. So that was very, very helpful. So what we do at this point is we take a roll call and we go through the commissioners and have them make comments and ask questions. So we'll start with Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no questions.
Okay, Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson here. Charles, good job, thank you. And tell the owners, I'll tell them on Monday, but I appreciate the additional pictures. It makes it much easier to get an understanding, and plan on going over the weekend, but that was very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, I will share that I had gone out to the site for two reasons. One was to look at the site, but secondly, I had received an email right after our workshop from a resident who was complaining that it appeared that somebody had been taking the downed trees and purposely blocking the cut through from Shookstown Road into the path area so they could no longer get through. So I had gone to investigate that, took a picture of the no trespassing sign, took a picture of where indeed I guess the neighbors had been trying to stop some of this trespassing on their own, and educated that person. So there was just a very timely email. So we all learned something.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
And I don't have any questions or comments. So I think we're good on this item then. Great. So thank you.
Thank you all. See you Monday.
Okay. See you Monday. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a final site plan for Governor Square. That is PC 20-205.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pam is out of the office. Well, we're all kind of out of the office at points now, but Pam is not working today. She's on vacation, so I'm going to be covering her items today. With regards to the Governor's Place application, just a couple of updates I'd like to point your attention to. The item was continued from last month's hearing due to some unresolved issues with the stormwater management and parking located in the emergency spillway of the stormwater facility area. Since then, the applicant has relocated the parking to resolve that conflict. The engineering department did note that in reviewing the stormwater comps as the plan moves into improvement plan stage, that additional adjustments could be needed based on the level of detail provided at that time. Hopefully it won't necessitate a revision to the site plan, but we did want to just mention that there is still some work to do, but the initial concern has been addressed. One of the other issues that came up at the workshop was the visibility. This was one of Commissioner Burns' concerns, visibility from 15, which is a scenic byway. The applicant has provided a kind of a view shed showing the areas that are going to be placed in landscaping and forest conservation and what's existing along 15. To that point, though, we did have one recommendation related to that, which is for the retention of 5 of the 7 trees that are located along that property line. We did, the applicant was originally proposing to remove all of them. We're asking, as noted on the plan currently, we've talked with them and believe they can retain 5 of those trees. So we are asking for that, and they were amenable to that. And I believe that was the extent of the changes. Like I said, the continuance was primarily to resolve the parking and spillway conflict. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And then as far as the trees, right? Part of the delay was due to the trees. Have you addressed that too? And
the continuance was primarily just for the spillway, but in working through the revision to the plan, we have discussed with them retaining more of the trees along 15 to provide a better buffering and at least softening of the landscape from 15.
Oh, sorry, I meant on the bottom of page 5, as far as the planting requirements, the priority planting area, they wanted to determine it in the future, but now the applicant has a current plan?
Correct. So that was right, a holdover from the previous plan we had reviewed, but they have addressed it at this time.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Manalis. Oh, I see.
Commissioner McNellis, I just had a clarifying question, and that was about the lighting, I think it was. Is this the one? I think they're requesting a modification to the parking area lighting, correct? And I guess so the reason is because it's spilling past lot 4A, but not into the residential area.
Correct. And thank you for pointing that out. I should have mentioned that that'll be part of your vote on Monday evening, will be for that light modification. And correct, it will not go outside of this project, the original subdivisions area. It will spill over this lot's boundaries
Right.
onto other lots that are going to be developed for non-residential purposes.
Okay. I was just curious. So this requires a modification for that, even though it doesn't go into the residential areas.
Correct. Yeah, the regulation is that it stops at the property lines, and because this site is going to be intended to interact and move with the other properties, the spillover is acceptable in this situation, but still requires a modification.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson here. No questions or comments. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, no questions or comments. Thank you.
So for me, going back to the 41 trees, and now that I'm reading it a little bit more closely, yes, we, as you said, we talked about this in November of the 2019. So we approved it in November. So there haven't been any changes, right? So that plan that we approved in November of 2019 stays the same. Is that correct?
What they are, the plan we approved in 2019 was the parking area was less on this site plan, but they were delaying to plant until future development of the other properties. But with this revision, they've come back and shown us those 41 trees.
Okay.
And resolved it.
That's what I wanted to get cleared up. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. I don't see anybody looks like they have any further questions, so I think we're good on this one. Thank you. Okay, the next item, item C, is a final site plan for Monocacy Center. That's PC 20-500.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Once again, this is a final site plan revision to the original Monocacy Center final site plan. As we discussed at the workshop, the purpose of this is to change the footprint of the buildings a bit by taking out the clubhouse and pool amenity and creating it as a separate entity on the multifamily lot. And there's some reduction of units as well as the number of levels in building 1. In terms of follow-up from our previous meeting, there really haven't been many changes. The applicant has clarified that the clubhouse and swimming pool are only going to serve the multifamily units and are not going to be serving the townhouse units as well. One of the concerns that we had raised was just if sufficient parking was provided, if people were going to be coming over across the street from the townhouses or anything. With that response, I think the parking is sufficient and hopefully most people will be walking or riding their bikes over to the amenity. The other issue that we had raised at the workshop was with regards to the planting of the street trees. There had been some adjustments to the details to accommodate the 8-foot wide path and that the placement of street trees might have to occur on private property within easements. We have talked with the applicant about that to see if they can make changes to the right of way, but most likely what's going to occur is that those street trees will be placed outside of the right of way on private property, but within easements for city maintenance. And I believe that is the extent of the changes. And the only condition we had was just related to those street trees.
Okay, Commissioner Burns has joined us, so we will start with Commissioner Burns.
Thank you. I've got no comments.
Okay, Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, I think my first question is about back to the parking and it being 3. I know that this is residential, not commercial. So out of the 3, and I couldn't remember, and I have to go back and look at the site plan. I was wondering if is there any requirement for like a handicap parking? It only being 3 spots.
So one of the spaces that they are including is an accessible space of the 3.
Okay, so
and that's
it'll only be really 2 parking spaces then.
correct, and for general use.
Correct.
as we discussed at the workshop, I believe it was in the workshop summary, there's not really a separate parking requirement for accessory amenities like this. If it were a standalone aquatic center or a standalone recreation center, those sorts of land uses do have minimum parking standards, but things that are accessory to residential communities or residential components of mixed use communities don't have their own parking requirement.
Okay. And the second thing was more so of a comment, which was basically for that particular area. Has there been any in the past a comprehensive traffic study done?
This area definitely has been the discussion of a lot of kind of road network, more global, if you will, issues with the introduction of the, I guess in the highway needs, the interchange at 26 at some point being a necessary item that we've expressed interest in. I don't know if there's been a concentrated traffic study in that context, but the network has been looked at from kind of a comprehensive planning angle in terms of establishing the through connections between this property and linkages to Market Square and the north-south direction, as we discussed at the last workshop, the connection between what was the State Farm property, but now is Frederick Health down to 26. And the interest for a access point at some point on 26, whether it be a right in, right out, has been something that the city has approached the state highway on several occasions, as well as applicants, individual applicants. I don't know the current state of those discussions, but.
Okay, because I was also thinking about the Christopher Crossing that's open, and then the new bridge and all of that whole area, even where the Wegmans is and so forth, that whole area. So I was just curious about that.
Dorothy, the traffic study for off-site roads, that was done at master plan.
Correct.
And they don't do another one forever.
When was the last one done?
Yeah, and I
The
think
master plan.
to echo what Gabrielle said, there's good redundancy, good grid work here, so there's lots of choices on how to go internally, but off-site, we can't talk about it, can we, Jerry?
We were just about to start a comprehensive study towards the end of last year, but then since COVID started, the traffic data collection and the traffic study itself sort of been pushed back. But the push for that particular study was that the interest from private development in that area for an access break of 26 to the Walmart site, and eventually that connection will continue on to Monocacy Center and Mill Pond Road. But the state did require the applicant to the private party to establish a need, first of all, before that permit would be granted, and the private party will have to purchase that access from State Highway Administration. So there are a lot of steps to go through to get there. City independently have created a CIP last year to look at an interchange at the Monocacy Boulevard 26 intersection, and city has been directing money, the private contribution we've been receiving towards that to potentially complete a concept study for that interchange at some point. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. The comp plan itself actually extends that Grange Mill Lane from all the way from 26 to Warman's Mill Road. So with the idea that Warman's Mill Road will eventually connect to Monocacy Boulevard through Dr. Nathan's property at that corner of the interchange. So we have the grand plans to connect all this. I think with the COVID and just the the timing is not quite there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Strassen.
Commissioner Strassen here. I have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, I thought I had a question, but Maybe I don't. I can't remember it. It was riveted with the discussion of the traffic impacts.
So what I thought you were going to comment on, Alderman Russell, was talking about that median on page 6 in the staff report. It talks about that it was suggested that the median be fenced and provided crosswalks to direct the pedestrian safety, and the applicant has provided the 2 separate cross-hatch crosswalks across the median between the 2 roundabouts. Applicant felt like the fencing was unnecessary since the median is raised. So my question about that whole thing, is anything going to be done? It sounds like the applicant felt like what they are proposing is going to be safe enough.
Correct. That was their response.
And what's a refuge area within the islands at the crossing? So that means at the crosswalks, they're going to stop and wait. And then, okay. Commissioner Burns, I saw you shaking your head, so. No? Okay.
No, I don't think there's any
Okay.
pedestrian safety issues there.
Okay.
I remember
Alderman Russell.
Roads are going.
I remembered my question.
Yeah.
And it's actually more of a general question, but talking about street trees on private property with easements. Have we ever done any sort of look back over instances where we've approved that to see how good the retention is of those trees? I'm just wondering how many homeowners after transfers don't realize that it's not their tree, it's the city's tree, and if we lose any. But that's, just an interest of mine as we were talking about this. Not necessarily be answered today.
I think that's a great question. And can you remind us who takes care of those trees?
We do.
Sure, we do. And
I did think so, yeah.
It's been more of a modern day phenomenon, I would say, something that's emerged over the past couple of years. I think that some of the regulations in the land management code and some of the design techniques in general out in the community, the more neo-traditional, the larger building footprints, smaller lots, reduced setbacks, some of those things are creating these conflicts with utility easements and the building lot itself and street trees. So it would be interesting. I think it's a great question. We'll follow up. I'll talk with Pam and see if there's been any analysis done, because I don't know how many. I mean, some of these plans have been approved and aren't constructed yet and are out there, but how many that we've had that have been planted for any substantial period of time and turned over to us. I think that's a great question, though.
And I'll just add from my legislative thought process, maybe there's some way that we can make sure that when properties transfer, they are informed that it is a city-owned tree and a street tree. Just something for me to think about on that end.
Okay. So Commissioner Manalis has her hand raised.
Yeah, I think I forgot to ask one more question. It was more of a clarifying question on page 4. Under the APFO, it talks about provisional approval for the sewer line and the road. And I guess that's just to accommodate, I guess, from what I'm seeing, to the impact of the development. Is that why it's provisional? And then when does it become, like, I guess, final? Will there a final approval?
Sure. So the provisional certificates, and I would have to go back and look at what the provisions were exactly. The provisional certificates are issued when there is mitigation that needs to be done. So if the way the APFO works is we conduct the test, and if the applicant, if it shows that a facility is failing, the applicant's required to come back with proposed mitigation. So the road fails, we'll install a traffic light. And then at that point, we say, yes, your traffic light will fix this, and we issue a provisional. The final then either has to be issued prior to building permit issuance. And in order to get that, they would either have to actually bond and enter into a public works agreement for the installation of that traffic signal, and then we'd sign off on the final and they get their building permit. Or if it's a phased project, like we see with some of the bigger residential developments, they might enter into what's called a mitigation agreement, where they work through the mayor and board to get an agreement approved that allows that improvement to be made somewhere later down the road. So maybe they get their first 50 building permits, and then at the 51st, they have to have that traffic signal installed. So either a mitigation agreement that has been approved by the mayor and board, or bonding and a public works agreement for the improvement will get you your final. So for planning commission's purposes, all we need at this stage is a provisional certificate, a full, if you're seeing a full at the point that we're working with you guys, that means that the facility was adequate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can see everybody. Are there any more questions or comments? All right, I think we're good with this one. So the fourth and last item on our agenda is, this is going to be the first of 2 required public hearings for the master plan of the MDC property, and this is also Pam's item.
Yes, thank you. So it is the first of 2 meetings, and in a very positive spirit, I think we will need that second meeting. I think there's still going to be some good discussion we need to have with the applicant on the road improvements specifically with this project. The major thing I just wanted to point your attention to, and thinking about this project until Monday, is kind of looking back at your previous version of the master plan and looking at what's in your packets for this hearing, because the road improvements that they're proposing to construct have changed. With the resubmittal that you have, the applicant is proposing to construct East 7th Street as a 60-foot wide collector to a point prior to the shared property line with Dairy Maid. That point is denoted by a change in the little hash marks on your plan from red to yellow. The yellow is where they don't intend to construct it, but it would just be dedicated right-of-way. They're proposing to dedicate 25 feet of right-of-way for Pine Avenue. They're proposing to dedicate 25 feet of right-of-way for East 5th Street along the property frontage, and construct the road within their half section. And they have removed that connector road between East 5th Street and 7th Street, which we discussed last time, that they were providing. That isn't on the current comprehensive plan. It is on the draft 2020 comprehensive plan, but was an option they thought to provide an interim level of connectivity before 7th Street connected all the way through from Church to East. Mm-hmm. In response, we've reassessed their change, and we have some changes that we also want to see, and that's why I say I think it's good we're going to be having a second hearing on this, and some additional time to talk it through. For East 7th Street, we did note that the portion that is in the East Church development to the east is constructed as an 80-foot wide right-of-way with parallel parking on both sides. The applicant, as I said, is proposing a 60-foot wide right-of-way with 2 11-foot lanes, 5-foot wide grass panel, and 5-foot sidewalks. We don't believe that the full 80 feet of right-of-way is needed, that section from East Church doesn't have to be connected through, because at some point it's going to hit a bottleneck when you get to East Street and beyond, that there's going to need to be a transition of that road. So what we've proposed is a 62-foot wide right-of-way. We did provide some kind of schematic cross sections for you to look at. The first one is the 7th Street. And that has 2 11-foot wide drive lanes, 1 8-foot wide parking lane, and an 11-foot protected bike lane, allowing for directional traffic, with then the grass panels and sidewalks. We are proposing that that section be constructed all the way up to the property line. We're trying to minimize basically the city's need to do improvements in the future. The applicant's big concern, I think you'll hear this on Monday, is that they do not want to create basically a private drive for Dairy Maid, that they believe that creating that full connection, allowing Dairy Maid the access at this point, would disincentivize the willingness of Dairy Maid to make the future connection, possibly, that now they have their access, and why would that connection need to be made? Obviously, there are probably some concerns from a marketing perspective too about those that just being used for that truck traffic, although in the ultimate connection, that's what it would be. we would look at some opportunities, and I think this is one of the things we need to discuss, whether there could be bollards or some way the road could be constructed up to the property line but not opened until that connection's made. The applicant suggested possibly dedicating that right away, having a deferral agreement for them to construct the remaining stub section at some point. So I think that's one issue we do have to work out, but the city's goal is to try to minimize the need to come back and make more public improvements. With regards to Pine Avenue, we're asking that that right-of-way be increased to a 30-foot half section, so it would be a full 60-foot width instead of the 25 feet that they are proposing. We're not requesting that that road be constructed at this time, but instead think it would be a reasonable improvement or trade for the Pine Avenue improvement to construct East 5th Street, which they're doing a portion of, all the way down to East Church Street. It's a similar length of road, the Pine Avenue, that they would otherwise be required to construct as a comp plan road. So that is something we're looking at with them and have been talking. There were concerns on their end that if right-of-way was available from all of the other property owners, because they didn't want to get into a situation where they had to try to acquire right-of-way from other people. We've done some preliminary site work, survey work, and believe that the right-of-way is there, but I think that's something we'll need to continue to discuss with the applicant. In terms of the East 5th Street right-of-way, that we also, instead of a 25-foot half section, a 30-foot half section for 60-foot full right-of-way. We did provide a conceptual cross-section of that as well. However, I would note we do want to update that to, instead of have a 10-foot shared use path, have a 9-foot shared use path with a 6-foot sidewalk to account for an offset in the right-of-way. So that would be a change from what's in the staff report. And then the last thing I wanted to clarify that I think will be discussed at the hearing with regards to East Church Street. If the connection is made down to 5th Street, we weren't looking for actually any public improvements to be made along the frontage of East Church Street, and just any dedication along their frontage further up the road. And then, as I said, construction to that intersection. So those are the big road issues. I don't know that there is anything in terms of the land use plan has not changed. The applicant is still proposing a mixture of dwelling units. However, that proposal also allows for the ultimate construction of all multifamily. So I don't want us to be operating under any full pretenses of a specific mix of units. They are proposing that it could be a full 350 multifamily units. And that is all I had. We do have David and Chirian are also here from a staff perspective. If I missed or omitted or incorrectly stated anything, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So Gabrielle, before we do a roll call, you had mentioned something was a change to the staff report. Is that the paragraph second from the bottom on page 11? And would you repeat that again so we can make sure we mark up our staff report correctly?
Absolutely. So on page 11, it is that second paragraph in the bottom about the East 5th Street right-of-way. And
right.
We're referencing the second concept sketch plan, which is shown in your packet. And right now it shows a 10-foot wide shared use path that we would be reducing down to 9 feet. And then on the opposite side, it's showing a 5-foot sidewalk behind the planting strip, and that would be increased to a 6-foot sidewalk.
So the 10 in the staff report gets a 9. And where is the sidewalk, size of the sidewalk? Sorry.
I don't think we have it referenced, but David,
okay.
That's where that foot would come out. That was where that foot would shift over to.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So sidewalk from 5 to 6 feet. Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Burns, you ready to go first? Okay, take it away.
Okay. Let me try to understand the reasoning for Pine, half a section of Pine unconstructed versus the 50-foot connector road that's in red on the plans. here's my concern. Given the two, I'd prefer what they have, and I'll tell you for a few reasons why. In other words, going with the connector road instead of half a pine, and then I'd like to hear the logic for pine versus the connector road. Well, first off, question: when do we think pine would be built?
I don't think we have any estimate on when that would be built. So half of it, or portion of it, would be impacting other properties.
Okay. Then the advantage of building the connector road to Fifth would be that the East Church residential community would have a direct connection into the grid via Fifth Street without having to get onto the bottleneck of Church Street. I call it a bottleneck. You're connecting down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. Without that connector and without Pine being constructed, you're not going to have that connection. So East of Church is not connected to the grid until such time 7th Street Extended is built, at which time it would be. But again, that's another thing that we don't know that we would when that might be built. I think I was on the fence at the workshop about whether 7th Street should be a reservation or a construction, and I think if anyway you're relieving them of the construction responsibility of having to build the connector, but having then instead to build 7th Street. If that's the quid pro quo, then I think we're still losing out that opportunity. The other thing I think we're missing is an opportunity to have some parallel system of roads adjacent to East Church Street, as just like we have all the way through the all the way up to Schifferstadt through that property that we've reviewed a few times near the airport, where we have this parallel connection to Church Street, and it's nice to have those parallel connections so that the traffic doesn't have to go from one subdivision out to Church Street and back through another subdivision. So I'm not a big fan of that switch, but I'd like to, and it's a juggling. There's pluses and minuses of both, I guess. I guess if you're coming up, what's the road behind the park, the fairground?
Highland?
Highland, yeah. If you're coming from Highland and you want to get north in the long term, then Pine might make sense, because there's a little bit of a dog leg on Church, but I understand. So from a long range perspective, I understand the desire to have Pine. The other thing I want to make absolutely sure that if we do go this route, that Fifth Street connected down to Church Street off-site is almost guaranteed to be able to be built. Now, the applicant has some reservations about it, and the city is confirming that you believe that it can be built reasonably. I believe the county public works project probably has a fence going down within that right of way. So I don't know if there's a way of getting them to play ball, especially if their site plan comes through. It'd be nice if these guys could partner when this does develop so that we can get a full section of road built, but that's nothing we can control here. So that is the connector versus Pine. Going to the illustrative drawings further back in the package, the ones in color that are referenced in the staff report. I'm wondering, and maybe David, you can explain this, why the bikeway is on the housing side of 7th Street as opposed to being on the open space side, because you got the houses fronting 7th Street on the south side. This is the 7th Street extended through the property. Then you have the bikeway, then you have parallel parking, then you have 2 lanes of traffic, and then you have the other side, which is just open space. So I'm just curious, especially since 7th Street is going to be a relatively low speed roadway.
So the purposes for that, we're currently attempting to pursue a two-way protected bike path on that side of 7th from the base all the way down through to East Street. This is the same side of 7th Street. The other reason is that having the bike lane there allows people to access it without having to cross the street at all. So you could easily just hop straight out of your home and then onto it. We also, I believe that the driveways and access ways are mostly going to be behind instead of at the street. And so those are the reasons why. Once
Okay.
we do, yeah.
No, I'm good. I didn't realize there was a grander plan to go all the way to the base on the south side. And I understand why you're to the south side, because the 15 interchange is on the north side, so that makes sense. It's just that we need to make sure that the culture within our bike riders who use that bikeway understand that they have to stop for pedestrians. So I think that's good planning. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
On the 5th Street, I'm wondering where the it's called a lane. We probably shouldn't show a lane, but on the 5th Street shared use path, I'm wondering where that came from. Is there a grander plan for a 5th Street shared use path, or is that something we just want to start doing on new roadways in the city?
Sharon, I believe that was, I believe that you had a comment about that would link into some of the other shared use path plans that we currently have.
Oh, and then go over to East Street, and because Fifth Street approaching East Street is a terrible road. I get it. A little connector between the East Street and I'm sorry, Karen, there you
go. Yeah, I'll take responsibility for that. Again, I mean, it's something that I figured that if we're successful to get the East Street Trail down to at least the 5th Street, then it's a good connection from the East Street Trail along 5th Street to the Carroll Creek Trail, which will cross Highland Street. So it's possible we could even connect through the Wren Park down to the trail. So the key is to bring it up to East Church, and then we'll figure out how to connect to Carroll. But I thought that's a nice off-street facility that people could use and be comfortable riding. Of course, there will be the 7th Street protected bike lane, which actually I believe goes directly into the Wren Park, the park there. So the more connections, the better. More facilities, the better. I mean, the whole idea is to have more opportunities to get around.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree. Thank you for that. There's a paragraph in the middle, page 12. It's right before stormwater management, and says that let's see. I guess it's referring to the trail connections to the north, shown on the plan to Apache Court and to the Linear Park Trail. And you didn't want to have a mid-block crossing there. And I would generally agree with that. Mid-block crossings are not great, but again, 7th Street is not is what I consider a high-speed road. I mean, what was your?
Well, I mean, the probably the more common was to more direct the applicant to think about if they're going to construct 7th Street, and I mean, for virtue of constructing it, they'll obviously probably want their access from 7th Street, because that's a primary access to them. So if I'm assuming that they will have an intersection in that thing, just directing them that rather than an uncontrolled middle of the block crossing, put it somewhere where you may be considering an access.
At subdivision, you want to make sure there's an intersection.
Correct. And that trail can connect to Fifth Street again. So it's nice to have a shared use path on Fifth Street if that connects to.
And I would agree, if they're going to build this sucker, they're going to have homes fronting it. Unfortunately, you can only do it on one side, I guess. Which brings on another point, the actual alignment of 7th Street. I'm a little concerned, the way it's shown on this plan, it kind of lines up directly east-west to where 7th Street intersects with Church. But it also leaves about a 100-foot strip of wasted space and additional 100-foot space that I guess the city would have to purchase if they're going to extend 7th Street all the way over to East Street. And I'm just wondering if we could just swing it up so that's the new 7th Street is pretty much contiguous to the next property line, closer to the backs of the homes, which would not be popular if I lived for the people who live there. And then do a mild S curve to get back to the alignment just beyond just before East Street. Again, I guess the downside of that would be you'd be putting a new road behind people's homes that currently doesn't have a road. The advantage though would be less real estate expenditure, and it'd be less disruption of the commercial operations going on by having 100 less feet of taking. So that's just something to think about, but I would defer to you guys because that's a little bit controversial, although I would support it if you did move the alignment.
Yeah, if I may jump in and just quickly answer that. Certainly, I'm not discounting what you're saying. I think it's much more a direct shot. And what this gives an opportunity to do stormwater management. And there is some forest, but also opportunity for stormwater management between existing homes and provide some buffer between the road. And so, yeah, I see your point, but I think, yeah, it's a balancing act. And this area particularly needs stormwater management. So I think there's an opportunity to have that stormwater management.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Sharon. I'm winding down now. Was there a traffic study done?
Yes, and the study was approved with the condition. There is a provisional certificate that requires for them to contribute towards the East Church Highland Street future traffic signal.
And in the study, was that intersection found to be adequate?
Which one?
East Church and Highland?
No, they had a delay, and that's where the requirement to contribute towards the future signal as mitigation.
If it fails, why wouldn't we have them build the signal, or at least fund the entire delta between so that the city could fund it if it's not warranted right now?
It is a requirement on Wren Farm to build it, to install the signal.
What if Wren Farm doesn't go forward?
Oh, they are putting a lot of infrastructure in.
Is this an early phase of Wren Farm? It's going to be signalized?
No, it's a later stage.
Okay.
Wren Farm is currently building onto Monocacy. We're working on intersection improvements currently for East Patrick at Monocacy intersection phased improvement. So I think they do have a phasing plan, but and based on the number of units, they will hit this intersection.
And your fair share contribution of 3.5%, that's based on long-term standard practices for calculating fair shares for signals?
We follow county's methodology.
You don't want to do that.
I thought that's a really elegant methodology.
One of the things I found in APFO is to be silent on who, because from the public standpoint, from government standpoint, we don't care who does what. So if something fails, it needs to be fixed. And by eliminating the who, then basically the first developer in builds it, and then they're going to moan and groan because they but they can form a road club if they want to. That's their choice. But I don't understand why. The planning commission is supposed to make a finding that there's adequate public facilities, but if an intersection fails and there's no remedy for this development, how can we find adequacy? That's my dilemma.
Yeah, the LMC lays out as to when a particular improvement falls on it become the full responsibility of an applicant. I forget the percentage, but there is a percentage kind of referenced in there to be a reasonable. If you only have 3.5% impact on an intersection, I mean, that's a really heavy undertaking for that project to say we're going to front the 100% of the cost and wait for the 97% to come through, rather than if you have somebody have a 50% impact, saying. There is a provision in the LMC. I forget what exactly the percentage is, but I can have that.
That's in the LMC, not the APFO?
I have to check.
Can you give me that reference? Because I have time and I can read. I have time to read. So I'd like to start, instead of coming into these things ignorant, I'd like to know a little more. So if you can get me that reference in the LMC where it talks about who does what and fair share percentages and stuff like that. And I need to reread the new APFO. All I have is the hard copy of the old one, so I can find that.
Yeah, it could be in the code itself. I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's all. Thanks. That's enough. The big issue then is the connector road versus half a pine being built by nobody, and that's where I just have a lot of heartburn.
So actually, I do have a question of Commissioner Burns, and thank you for that instructive conversation and comments. When you say pine versus the connector, I thought what they presented last time was they were not going to construct pine, and this time they're not going to construct pine. They're going to dedicate right away, but what is the difference in what they were going to do with pine and what they are now going to do? And maybe that really is a question for Gabrielle.
Sure. If it were a trade-off that occurred, it would be the 7th Street construction and the connector road, that they dropped the connector road because they're going to construct 7th.
That's what okay. So pine is basically the same.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Cool. Let me go to the next commissioner, Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment. I think Commissioner Burns covered everything
Thoroughly. Commissioner Strawson.
Commissioner Strawson here. I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Alderman Russell, I saw Zach Kirschner pop in. He's our Director of Public Works. I sense that he may have something he wants to share with us, so I'm going to defer to him.
How's that? All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. Yes, I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Burns, some of the questions that you had about the two options and why staff are recommending the current option. We met multiple times as a team and reviewed this plan along with the applicant. So previously, of course, they had proposed, as you mentioned, the connection of 5th through the 5th to 7th through the property, which would provide for that more immediate connectivity through there. But the challenge, the issue, the concern that staff has is that this development is responsible to construct 7th Street and the half section of Pine in accordance with the comprehensive plan and the requirements in the LMC. And if they do not construct 7th at this time, that will be left to the city to construct. That's about 1,000-foot length of roadway. Just a very, very rough order of magnitude estimate. We're spending $2,000 to $2,500 a linear foot to build a roadway like that. So you're in the $2 to $3 million range in future dollars that the city would be faced with if they had to build that piece of roadway. So we felt that we'd be better off to get 7th today, even though it would dead end. There would likely be connector streets through the development, although I understand they would probably be private, so not really for the public to utilize. But in exchange for not constructing the half section of Pine today, we proposed to the applicant that instead they dedicate Pine not be responsible for making any improvements to Pine in the future, and instead take the dollars that they would have spent on that half section of Pine and improve County Lane out to Church Street to extend that grid in that area. So that was the thought process behind why we recommended this current layout over the previous layout. Oh, and with regards to the county project at the county facility there, we've met preliminarily with county DPW, and their plans currently, they shared a sketch plan with us, was to relocate that fence to the right-of-way line, which would provide adequate right-of-way on their half-section side. And then we've had some discussions with them about what the frontage improvements may need to look like as part of their project.
That was very helpful. Thank you. We're going to do another quick roll call just to see what other comments and questions. Commissioner Burns. I don't see your face. You're still on, but you're on mute. Any more questions? Let Commissioner Manalis. Anything else?
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment.
Commissioner Strawson, anything else?
Nope, I'm here. I'm good.
Alderman Russell?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Well, then we'll just leave it to Commissioner Burns. If he has more questions, we will talk about it further at the hearing. And thank you, everybody, for jumping in and informing us about all this and providing all of the detail. Okay, so that's it for our 4 items. Anything else? Yes, Alderman Russell.
I'm not. Oh, there's Ron again. Ron, were you going to be there on Monday?
I can't
You're
hear
on
you.
mute.
Yes, I expect to be. And Zach, thanks, Zach, for that. I heard 80% of it. Yeah, okay, that helps. But I'm just very leery about the future. Isn't there any way that somebody can talk to Dairy Maid at least? I mean, if we had something in the works, I mean, is that inappropriate to talk to a property owner about their willingness to provide land, and if so, where might that be for a connector? Is that something between now and a month from now?
I'll speak up. I'm not sure if you were asking me or not, Commissioner Burns, but I mean, obviously Dairy Maid is well aware of the proposed connection of 7th Street through their property. With regards to your proposal to move that road a little further to the north, I would concur with what you said, that likely the residents there would not appreciate that, not having a buffer, but also it would make it challenging to get that street to line back up with existing 7th Street. I'd prefer to not have S-curves wherever possible. So it really needs to go in that location if it's going to be extended to East Street. So at some point in the future, if or when Dairy Maid redevelops, the city would have to work with them to make that happen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Zach. What I was thinking of, if we do have a north-south spine road that's loaded with homes on either side, it would be good if it would. Can you take care? Thank you. It would be good if that could be made a little more of a primary connector, recognizing that people will be cutting through, as opposed to be a very narrow, calming connector, and then that then takes the place of the red connector road.
Are you referring to Pine? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
No, if we're giving a pass on the connector road, okay, and instead they're going to build 7th Street and they're going to build that connection for 5th Street extended down to Church, then at least when they do their subdivision, and maybe there can be some text put somewhere to this effect, that there would be a north-south, call it a primary residential street, that would take the place of it for people who want to travel from east of Church to the grid. I think that's what you were saying, Zach, earlier, that might be viable to go through the existing residential with an existing residential street. and that would provide the connector.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be ideal to have a connection from 7th down to 5th through this proposed development. I think that's what you're referring to.
But instead of making a serpentine or making it and calming it, just recognizing that that's going to have some through traffic on it, and designing it as such. That's all.
Right. What I don't know is whether or not the developer plans to have this be all condominium inside and no public streets or not. I'm not sure what the proposal is at this point.
So if reasonable or if feasible, then it's something I'd like to see them. Just a note towards. I mean, this is master plan, and these are things that we as planning commissioners can have an impact on outside of the code to some extent. No, I guess it's not outside the code. I'm confusing annexations. But if it were legal, I would like to at least have some language discussing this issue of the importance of connecting the grid, so to speak. Because I have no confidence that Pine's going to be built in the near future. So, thank you.
Okay.
If I might just quickly comment on Ron's question. Certainly, this is not the only property. We do have the other property to the corner, and I believe the plan for the developer is to carve off that existing office building. So if there is a reuse in the redevelopment or development of the Tomasini property at the corner, so not necessarily put it on this property, but could be on the other two properties as a connection. There is a stub that exists at the 7th Street, so it's possible to connect through the other two. So, all costs may not be lost at this point.
Okay. I can see I can't see Commissioner Manalis, but before we leave, are there any further comments or questions from any of the commissioners? Okay. All right. So I think we're good then. And Gabrielle, anything from you? You were nodding. You're good?
Nothing
Okay.
else on this end. We'll look forward to further discussion on it on Monday.
Okay. Well, thank you all.
Thank you. Feel
And
better.
We will
Bye,
talk.
take care of
Oh,
yourself.
sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
I hope to be here Monday. I'll try.
That would be great.
Goodbye.